All right, folks, we should be live. And right now, we should be live over on D Live and Entropy as well. I did a mic check before I started. Hopefully, there are no echo issues as we started off yesterday. I'm a lot more prepared today. I'm actually less well slept as far as hours, but better well slept as far as quality, since I got about 5 hours of sleep today, but I feel really good. Yesterday, I was quite tired. I'd been accumulating for a while, as I often do not sleep well, unfortunately. Um, let's see here. I know a lot of you might join me a little bit later on, have to rewatch this because Yiz is over streaming with Aiden Paladin right now. I was just over on her channel in the Corner Club because Aiden had a scheduling issue, so I kind of came in and we just chatted for a little bit as I was setting up the stream. But hopefully you guys will come back, sleep well, unfortunately. And so far, looks like everything is running rather well, which is good. So, guys, whether you join me later or you join me now or whatever you're going to do, this is All Minus One. My name is Bill. If you're new here, please like, share, subscribe. You know the thing. I basically take a lot of information and I try to compress it, probably not very well, into an hour or so. And I decided to start doing streams for various reasons. One personal reason is that I have more and more of my time consumed recently with taking care of my very pregnant wife and things around the house and getting prepared for this child. So, live stream's the way to go. If you guys like the show and you want to ask me a question or something, there is an entropy that is linked in the YouTube description. I'm also over on D Live. I have to be on D Live to do entropy. So, in any case, you guys can go there and donate if you want, because entropy does that. Otherwise, I'm not monetized. You could, if you wish, go over to Subscribestar, do a monthly subscription. I have tiers there, but I only have one subscriber, so I'm not really doing any extra or special content there. But I promise you, if you guys would do something like a $50 a month donation, like a big donation, or a $25 a month even, that's enough. I have no issue at all making special content exclusively for you, and I will certainly try and do such a thing. So, with that said, let's see here. Let's jump into some of the things that I have. So, one of the first things is the White House tracking YouTube channel changes. And these are from various dates recently, right? If we go down here just a little bit, you're going to see from this website, this is 81m.org if you want to find it yourself. As we go down, none of these are changed, and then all of a sudden, way, way down here, well, where's that? I just had it. Oh, I know why. I'm no, sorry guys. Can't see it in dark mode. All right, so this page is already darkened. So you can see here that the changes aren't really effective, but these are all videos from today, right? But as we go down in history, we'll see that, there's a change in the approval rating. Right here, approval to disapproval. Hopefully you can see this. If not, go over to 81m.org, and this will get pulled up for you. The video from the 29th, Vice President Harris delivers remarks on the progress made during the first 100 days in office. Well, that was highly ratioed, and the official approval rate, it says 10.9%, but the real approval rate was only 4.9%, with a 135.43% amount of manipulation. And even more so on the next video, President Biden's Oval Office 100 days by the numbers. And you can see giant amounts of manipulation there by YouTube by removing the downvotes. Now, they do this to hide what they don't want you to know, and that is Biden's not popular, guys. He never was. People either didn't like Trump or other stuff happened, you know? The stuff I can't talk about on YouTube because then I will be yeeted or, you know, at least on a timeout back in YouTube prison. And I just came off of that. So it'll be 2 weeks for me next time. Not really something I'm looking forward to. Not something I'm trying to do. So, as we can scroll down through here, I mean, the difference of 5,000 likes right here in this particular video. 5,000. Look at that. And they're petty like this. They do this to me all the time. I lose a bunch of upvotes, and I mean, we've lost it midstream. I've even said something about it. Losing upvotes, lose subscribers up and down. If my subscriber count was anything over what I've seen over time, growing naturally the way it should have instead of up and down constantly, I should right now be having at least double or triple the subs. No joke. Because for a long while, I was gaining 2 or 3 subs a day, which isn't a lot, but when you're a small channel, that's huge. And 2 or 3 a day, and then, you know, I would get that for a few days in a row, and then all of a sudden they'd dwindle right back down. And I don't always make daily content, or I haven't always, but I've done a lot of content, guys. I haven't been on YouTube for a year. Go look at the library of content that I've done. I think I have over 250 videos. And that doesn't include the live streams here that I just started doing. So keep those things in mind. This is real-time proof of manipulation right here. This is funny. 10,000 downvotes, and they manipulated it some, but yeah. I guess they couldn't really push it that far. See, here's one. This very good ratio. They're like, oh, we're not going to overly ratio it. 599. It was originally 2,000. So anyways, guys, I caught wind of this because last night I was watching Adam Krigler's show. And I don't really watch him often, but I do watch Tim Pool's live stream on occasion, depending on his guest. And depending on what mood I'm in or what we're doing. I mean, I got to do family time and stuff like that. And my wife complains because I'm always listening to some sort of news, some sort of commentary. So can't do it constantly, right? But I was cooking dinner, and in the process of cooking dinner, I turned on Adam Krigler, and he had Carlin Borsinko on. And I really actually like Carlin, even though she's kind of a hippy-dippy type person. But I also come from that like hippy-dippy art side myself. So I think Carlin has a long way to go, but she's come very far in a very short time. And she's promoting great ideas like reading Ludwig von Mises and stuff like that right now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that's good. But this interesting thing happened where in the middle of their conversation, Adam brought up Nick Fuentes because a super chatter talked about it. And then she talked about how she was visited by the FBI. So I will just let this play and you guys can hear it for yourself.
Know that one. Other shows, Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, Assassination Classroom, Yurusei Yatsuru, Sura, Ranma 1.5, Tenchi Muyo, and oh my goodness, I may have botched some of those names. I'm sorry. But cool. Yeah, I'll check. I did like Firefly. I think I like Cowboy Bebop. Taylor, oh my gosh, so many super chats. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much for the support, everyone. Taylor says, yes, automate everything. I need a spaceship to get off this rock. Also, Gundam and Dragon Ball Z are superior anime. Oh, okay. I've never watched Gundam or Dragon Ball Z. Never watched.
All right, I know they're talking about nonsense. I think right here he's going to talk about the Nick Fuentes thing.
Never got into those. Excuse me. Dusty says, hey, Adam, it was very brave of you to acknowledge Nick Fuentes. Appreciate it very much. Is it really brave? Like,
so I don't understand this because, like, I guess I guess a lot of conservative people, or like even just like people that don't like Nick Fuentes, aren't acknowledging that he's on the no-fly list, and it's nonsense.
It's
like,
ridiculous.
Again, I do not like this guy, but we all should be able to stand up and say what's right is right, and it is not acceptable that he's not able to fly. There's no reason
even
for
if you
it.
disagree with him. It's a free country. It's
even
called
if he
freedom
committed
of speech.
a crime. Like, frankly, criminals are allowed to fly.
Right.
They're like that's a civil liberty that they should not be able to just take away at the drop of a hat.
Yep. And especially with no due process. Like that's a problem. So thank you, Dusty. And you know, I it's like when they banned Alex Jones. It's like, oh, this is the beginning of the end. This is gonna get worse, and it did. And this is what I'm seeing there. It's like, okay, this is gonna get worse if this is gonna be allowed to pass.
Right. And if you don't stand up for people that you dislike when it happens to them, then don't be surprised when it happens to you.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Let's see. Exo Dreve says, didn't see a super chat with it, but Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to your suggestion list. Thank you guys for all this this anime stuff. I don't get a lot of time to watch stuff nowadays. I'm running basically 2 shows. I got my Twitch show, and then I got well, it's not really a show. It's more my Twitch channel that I go live and play, and then of course this show. You know, so my time to watch stuff is few and far between. But I will check out some. I think Full Metal Alchemist, I've been told, is really good. I know Tim really bopping it along. Thank you guys.
I'm sorry.
Nope. Record of Grand Crest War.
It's somewhere around here, guys. Forgive me. I had to.
Ninja Scroll was my first anime. Also, Robert Shaw says,
yesterday.
nice. That was a great movie. Have you seen it?
Nope.
Do you like anime at all?
Not really. I had a former, like an ex that tried to get me into it, and it just did not.
And would you consider or interested in doing a review or a segment about film and the issues that?
Well, I thought I had a correct timestamp queued up. It is around here, but
don't automate a lot. We need to work or grow weak. I know, but it's gonna happen. We can't stop it.
I think they're about.
He's
to
on
talk about
cast shows, and this is the Krigler show. So
wow.
We'll just leave it at that. Sean Jack says, best anime, King of the Hill. Wait.
In any case, guys, either way, you can go find it. It's somewhere around here at this mark. I don't want to harp on it too long, but Carlin Borisenko talked about that she was out of town. I think she was in California. She lives in New Hampshire, and her husband was visited by the FBI while she wasn't home, and it was all because she was at the Capitol building. Now, she wasn't inside the Capitol. She was at the building. That's an important distinction. And, hey, Holly, thanks for jumping over. You'll be here listening? Okay, great. So, appreciate it. Sorry, guys. I got to click on and move boxes and do stuff and whatever else. In any case, so the FBI showed up at her house all because Carlin Borisenko tweeted a joke after she got back to a hotel room about the Capitol being invaded or something like that. Now, she didn't even know. She found out later. She wasn't there. She has evidence of this. But the FBI contacted her and investigated her over a tweet that was a joke. This is what we're dealing with right now. And we have to understand this. This is largely the doings of individuals not holding their ground, not standing firm. This is the big problem that people have with the lawbertarians, right? Not the generalized, milder libertarian camp, but the ones that are on the side of not fighting for anything, basically. Well, they can have their stuff. And I actually believe that people can go have their stuff too. But you have to realize that you can say that all you want, but they can have their stuff and we can have ours. The problem is those people that you're talking about, they can go do their own thing. They can have their own commune or whatever else. They don't want you to have your stuff either. They're going to force their beliefs upon you because it gives them a sense of control and power over their lives. One of the fundamental points, the keys to the psychology of a leftist is control. It is control over other people. It is control over their lives. And it's really a cult of death and fear. It's quite sad. And, of course, depravity, where they wish to do more and more depraved things. But again, that is to free themselves, supposedly. And what they don't understand is they're just putting themselves deeper into a spiritual slavery, if you would. And I will talk a little bit more about that here after a while. But just real quick, I want to check on the stream health and everything, make sure everything's good. So once again, guys, if you are watching, there's a link to Entropy down there if you want to donate anything. I will be doing this probably from now on, the live streaming thing. It's a little bit easier because I don't have to worry about it uploading elsewhere. It does it automatically. I don't have to, do all this work in between. Making the videos isn't the hard part, and the research isn't so hard for me because I'm doing it all the time. But it's the time I'm waiting to get everything uploaded, my computer to process it, and whatever else. Even though I don't edit and I don't have to wait for rendering or any of that stuff, I can just, record and go. So live streaming makes it a little bit easier. I do need to catch up on my alternative text sources, my backups. They're in the description as well. That is Rumble and PeerTube. But, I'll do that. I have my ups and downs. I'm working on so many things. I've been really, really working hard on my book, which I'm hoping to have out by the end of the year. I think I'm going to get a lot of it solidly done through the first few weeks of my daughter's arrival, like times while she's sleeping, stuff like that, because it's just easy for me to write stuff down. In fact, I have almost everything of the story sketched out pretty well. I'm developing the characters more, secondary and tertiary characters. I'm getting really, really excited about this. And I was telling my wife about the plot, the basic plot line, and she's like, wow, you really thought about this. I was like, yeah. This is a story that it's meaningful. It's meaningful. It will have great adventure to it. It's going to be set in a near future, sort of cyberpunk dystopia, but it won't be too outlandish. It's kind of going to reflect things of today, and it's going to talk really about the psychology and spirituality of individuals and relationships, some deeper impacts of things like not confessing your sins and not being honest, and how that those things can have ramifications in the future, and how our actions create ripples of dramatic ramifications. So it's going to be, I think, really, really good, because despite my ramblings and whatever else on the interwebs, I can write rather well, and it's a lot more honed in and focused than when I get up and just start blabbing my mouth, right? And right now I'm looking at having to do this as probably a series, because the full story that I really want to tell is just, it's going to be like Lord of the Rings if I go that far, where it's like 1,000 pages, and that's just not a novel people buy. So you got to make a trilogy out of it, right? But in any case, I am really excited, and I do feel like that hopefully by the end of the year, I'll get that published. I got to figure some stuff out. I can publish directly to Amazon through Kindle, and I get 70%, which is pretty cool. But I don't know how that works out if I want to get paperback publishing, which I would like to have hard copies as well. I love hard copy books. I'm a big fan of it, because when you have there we go. When you have like a hard copy book like this, what you could do, of course, this is an academic book, but if you can see this, like what you can do is highlight and make notes, which is what I do in everything that I read. And the best way to really absorb information is to write about it, right? Which is why they get you to do such a thing in college, and to really think about it, to write about it, because writing actually makes you hone in and focus your thoughts. So I'm reading that, or was reading that, and of course I'm making highlights in it and notations or whatever, and that's actually solidifying those thoughts in my brain more strongly. And often I'm arguing with the authors, but it's just the way I process the information. And so people were like, well, how come? They're like, wow, you have a really good memory. Why do you remember everything? Well, one, that was just a gift from God. It's one of my talents, fortunately. It's not always the best. Depends on how much sleep I have. But when I was little, I used to play the memory game versus my mom and just I would crush or my sister who's a little bit older. And I mean, I'm talking about I was like 4 or 5 and I would just crush, the memory game. So, stuff like that, I've always been pretty good at. I think some things I've done in my past, some drug use when I was younger, excessively or too much drinking at certain low points in my life, maybe have fried a few brain cells. But I'm pretty sure my brain works pretty well in general. I hope. Who knows? I've had some head trauma on occasion too. So, I mean. We'll blame anything I say that's off on that. So, all right, before I move on to the next thing, hey guys, thanks for joining once again. I see I got another viewer in. Please hit that like button, share, subscribe. Help me grow, guys. It's important to get voices out there, and as certain people get higher and higher profile, they actually get more likely to be yeeted. And some of these lower profile voices, some of the circles I hang out in on the interwebs sphere, they can kind of get by with some things sometimes until you get on the radar, right? And there are radars for sure. So let's do this. I thought this was really good, and this is part of our problem here in our society. Let's play this video.
The radical left is trying to steal America. Creeping socialism, more aggressive gun control, sex changes for children. In the Republican Party, we won't stand for any of that for another 5 years.
That's right. We don't put up with the left's radical agenda until they start to contradict it. And then we adopt it to totally own them by saying, I'm a better liberal than you are. See, I own you. Transgender athletes? A man can't take a role that's meant for a woman. Opposing gay marriage? That's just retrograde. Ban assault weapons? What part of shall not be infringed don't you understand? Bump stocks? No one needs one of those. Late-term abortion? But life is precious at every stage. Ban first trimester abortions? But those kill them really early on. See, if we let old-school conservatives like him run the show, we'll never be taken seriously when we try to push back against obvious atrocities, like transgender 3-year-olds. Stop! I'm you from the future! You have to drop the issue of transgender 3-year-olds, and no one's gonna take us seriously when we try to fight transgender fetuses! And I'm you from the even further future! You have to stop opposing transgender fetuses! It makes us look retrograde for trying to ban child sacrifice after 2 years! I'm from the even further future! Stop being such a stickler about giving painkillers to the 2-year-olds used in child sacrifice ritual! That's just a slippery slope to ending child sacrifice altogether, and everyone knows it!
Maybe you could just stick to your principles?
People like you are destroying the movement!
Hey folks, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this cartoon, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment below. And if you want to help us make more, donate at patreon.com/freedomtunes. Thank you.
The least I could do is let Seamus get his plug in since I'm bringing up his video. But of course, I'm plugging it as well. If you guys haven't seen it, go over there and give Seamus a like over at Freedom Tunes. And, I think that the video is pretty apropos, right? Like, this is what we're doing. This is what the Republicans do. They're controlled opposition. They slightly give in. Now, some of us started off with more liberty-minded, live and let live, let people be positions. And some of us maybe were more conservative as we were younger. But there is this this thing where the Republicans just don't really fight back, and most of them are actually leftist guys. Anyone who's a neocon is a leftist. You know, they have ties to Trotsky. Go. I mean, you don't have to look at Michael Malice's stuff, but Michael Malice talks about it. But go look up his stuff on that. But also, if you want to read up quickly about it, go on Wikipedia and Google neocons. They're all lefties. They were all communists that came over because they thought that they could use the Republican Party to start war. Before that, prior to that, the Republicans were always anti-war, and they just let themselves be infiltrated. And that's why, you know, folks talk about the mono party, of course. But what's really going on is the manufacturing of consent, which is really what we're going to kind of get to. And why I titled the stream, why I titled it, that is predictions from the past, because we're going to talk about what I got into a little bit yesterday with George Washington's farewell address. We're going to talk about De Tocqueville, because his book, Democracy in America, was fundamentally important. De Tocqueville predicted the Russian and American conflicts that would happen in the future based on ideologies. He also had a great lecture on in the legislature of France while he was a part of it, or the parliament, or whatever it was. He had a great lecture on why they should not adopt socialism. I'm a big fan of de Tocqueville. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about as classical liberalism. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexis De Tocqueville, Frederick Bastiat. These are the people that I draw from, that were living in the time of, yes, the Enlightenment, but also an age where Christianity was used, and the principles of Christianity were used to provide freedom for the society, to provide just rulership. So over here from the Academy of Ideas, again, you know, I just want to use this because this came out a few days ago. I just saw this last night, and it was exactly the kind of stuff I was talking about yesterday. So if you guys don't know this channel, it's a great channel about history, philosophy. It does very good videos that are well edited, and quotes are in there. And then he also sets up these his website, where he has the transcript of his entire videos, which is very informative. You can find an immense amount of quotes. So if you are a philosophically minded person, or you are very interested in psychology or the humanities, if you would, the liberal arts, as I am, and I mean the classical liberal arts, not the stupid stuff they talk about today, then this is a great channel for you if you were not aware of it. So let's look at that. Oh, Skippy the ad.
The masses have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to deify error if error seduce them. Whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. Diseases of the body can spread through a population and reach epidemic proportions, but so too can diseases of the mind. And of these epidemics of the latter variety, the mass psychosis is the most dangerous. During a mass psychosis, madness becomes the norm in a society, and delusionary beliefs spread like a contagion. But as delusions can take many forms, and as madness can manifest in countless ways, the specific manner in which a mass psychosis unfolds will differ based on the historical and cultural context of the infected society. In the past, mass psychoses have led to witch hunts, genocides, and even dancing maniacs.
So we know this, right? And this is kind of what I'm going to do as I go through this segment of the stream today. We know that mass psychosis is a reality, a thing that has happened many a times, and we are living in it now. The majority is not under this, but it's enough of the mass that it has power. Most people just aren't thinking, they're going along to get along. The binality of evil, if you would. This is a problem, and it is incumbent on leadership to make sure that this doesn't happen. Our leaders aren't leaders, though. They're managers and power mongers. They want these things to happen in order to control the society. And much like I was saying last night, I was over on the Sniper's Nest last night. If you guys don't know that, check out Sniper. He will be on our show, The Ends Justify the Memes, this Wednesday at August 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern, which is our usual streaming time. But yeah, I was talking about this over there, and we go through this thing where the belief is that so many people believe this, therefore I need to believe it too. It's not true. You need to be de-individuated. And actually, Academy of Ideas has a great video on that. I have a video of on that to some degree myself, my earlier work I used. And part of that work I built off of his work. Of course, I did that because I started off and it was helpful. It was like a template, right? But the common theme with Jung and Jungian psychology as far as preventing mass mob violence, for preventing something like the rise of the Third Reich or the Salem witch trials or the communist revolution or the cultural revolution in Maoist China, that people need to be individuated. And the only way to do that is to understand the different parts of their psyche. And that first part is what he would call the persona, and that is the mask or the appearance that you put out to the world. Most people's personas are not aligned with their inner selves, and that is what they project onto the world. But what they tend to show on the surface is what society asks of them. They hide like cowards, and that's why they go along to get along. And then you have to dig down and understand, but behind that, your ego, which is more like your true self. But they're deeper layers. And again, these are just really analogies or metaphors, folks, of how you can think about it. This is not to say that these things are true, but I think that they're useful ideas. And I am a little bit of a pragmatist. I'm not like a full hardcore pragmatist. So the description of using words to convey these ideas is kind of important. And so below the ego, which I'm not going to focus so much on because it's not really the most important part, is the shadow, right? And that is your inner darkness. And most people never confront that. They're very naive. And because they never confront that, they are easily able to be evil. They're able to do these horrible things because they don't understand their evil nature. They tell themselves they're a good person. But on the other hand, Jung suggested you have to tame that shadow. And when you do that, then you can be more free and be a better person. Now, I think the only true way to do that is through Christ. But again, I know there are plenty of atheistic people out there or other religious sects who live good, decent lives and have high moral standards. My thing is, unless you're in direct communication with God, I just don't understand how you get through, because perhaps it's my weakness, my infirmities, but man, I'd have given up a long time ago if it wasn't for the Lord. In any case, let me keep playing this video.
Manias. But in the modern era, it is the mass psychosis of totalitarianism that is the greatest threat. Totalitarianism, writes Arthur Versluis, is the modern phenomenon of total centralized state power, coupled with the obliteration of individual human rights. In the totalized state, there are those in power, and there are the objectified masses, the victims. In a totalitarian society, the population is divided into two groups, the rulers and the ruled, and both.
Something real quick, I think I might have skipped over. Just circle back to, like Pasaki. Anyways, I was saying on Sniper's Nest last night, the people who are trying to fight communism, trying to fight fascism, who are saying they're communist, which they're not. They're just authoritarian idiots and emotional fools, mutants, right? Those folks are just being used by those people in office, the people who are fascistic. We're going to talk about that a little bit too here in a minute because of Joe Biden's speech the other day, where Joe Biden basically laid out the fascistic role of the federal government. And I mean, it's been there forever. It's just mask off now, right?
Both groups undergo a pathological transformation. The rulers are elevated to an almost godlike status, which is diametrically opposed to our nature as imperfect beings who are easily corrupted.
This is an important point too, the godlike status. Now, I would make jokes to lefties about Obama being their God king, and the first thing Trump's your God. And I'm like, dude, I'm not a MAGA guy. I'm like, I didn't vote for Trump the first time. I did the second time. I wasn't against Trump, but and I thought he was a good, wrench in the wheels. I knew he was an outsider. But yeah, I supported the president, but I was not like some super MAGA guy. These people don't understand. But you talk to a lefty about Obama, unless they're very hardcore, like people over on the website Jacobin or something like that, they're not going to criticize Obama. He was the first reality celebrity president. Not really. I think JFK probably was, and FDR a little bit to some degree before that. But like in the times that we live in, with the technology that we have, with the internet and everything else, that's what he was. And to make Trump to be one of these figures is ridiculous, because the problem is that Trump's policies didn't reflect what most of these individuals reflected within their policies. And mind you, the two fascists there with the communists, they basically didn't have implementation of policies much different.
By power. The masses, on the other hand, are transformed into the dependent subjects of these pathological rulers and take on a psychologically regressed and childlike status. Hannah Arendt, one of the 20th century's preeminent scholars of this form of rule, called totalitarianism an attempted transformation of human nature itself. But this attempted transformation only turns sound minds into sick minds, for as the Dutch medical doctor who studied the mental effects of living under totalitarianism wrote, "There is in fact much that is comparable between the strange reactions of the citizens of totalitarianism and their culture as a whole, on the one hand, and the reactions of the sick schizophrenic on the other. The social transformation that unfolds under totalitarianism is built upon and sustained by delusions. For only deluded men and women regress to the childlike status of obedient and submissive subjects, and hand over complete control of their lives to politicians and bureaucrats. Only a deluded ruling class will believe that they possess the knowledge, wisdom, and acumen to completely control society in a top-down manner. And only when under the spell of delusions would anyone believe that a society composed of power-hungry rulers on the one hand, and a psychologically regressed population on the other, will lead to anything other than mass suffering and social ruin. But what triggers the psychosis of totalitarianism? As was explored in the previous video of this series, the mass psychosis of totalitarianism begins in a society's ruling class. The individuals that make up this class, be it politicians, bureaucrats, or crony capitalists, are very prone to delusions that augment their power, and no delusion is more attractive to the power-hungry than the delusion that they can and should control and dominate a society.
Now, if you guys want to hear my take on Beijing Biden real quick, we'll get back to this video. What we basically have with Beijing Biden is an old man who's not very competent. He's obviously has some brain issues, right? He's had some aneurysms and whatever else in the past, and he's probably demented. So old Beijing Biden thinks that he's a powerful man, and they let him think that. They do. He runs around. You can see him in some of these private meetings that were released or whatever, and he runs around, he barks and commands like he's a strong man. Look at how he handles his voters. Listen here, Jack. You lying dog-faced pony soldier. The one guy, why are you getting so nervous? And most people don't understand that these are actually outbursts and attacks and extremely impolite. Like this idea that Joe Biden's some old nice man is absolutely absurd. We know that he's a weirdo. He's a creep. We know because of Judicial Watch the other year that a Secret Service agent filed a complaint because Biden was trying to feel up his girlfriend. Almost hit the guy. Almost decked him. And they buried that. But we can see Hunter's life. Now, the son isn't necessarily a reflection of the father, but then we have the I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but the lady that said that she was assaulted when she was a staffer. And there's evidence that happened, right? She said that Biden physically penetrated her, if I'm not mistaken, which is rape, folks. I don't care what appendage he used for it, or if he used an object, it's still rape. Biden had no money, literally no money, until he became the vice president. I believe CNN reported that his net worth was $37,000, which is that seemed weird to me. Like they're not looking at assets because maybe they were trying to lie that Biden was he was an average citizen. He was just a regular person who'd been in government for 40 years. I don't know. But Biden is not this character they're trying to go about. He's a strong man. He's a strong man, though, who's being controlled. And if you watch his actions, you see the speeches that he writes. That is the whole projection. Look at how they've groomed him. Look at his bomber jacket and his sunglasses and his German shepherds. Like they wouldn't drag him if he had to actually walk him on a leash. So just some things to consider as this video goes forward.
When a ruling elite becomes possessed by a political ideology of this sort, be it communism, fascism, or technocracy, the next step is to induce a population into accepting their rule by infecting them with the mass psychosis of totalitarianism. This psychosis has been induced many times throughout history, and as Mirlu explains, it is simply a question of reorganizing and manipulating collective feelings in the proper way. The general method by which the members of a ruling elite can accomplish this end is called menticide, with the etymology of this word being a killing of the mind, and as Mirlu further explains, menticide is an old crime against the human mind and spirit, but systematized anew. It is an organized system of psychological intervention and judicial perversion through which a ruling class can imprint their own opportunistic thoughts upon the minds of those they plan to use and destroy. Priming a population for the crime of menticide begins with the sowing of fear. For as was explored in the first video of this series, when an individual is flooded with negative emotions such as fear or anxiety, he or she is very susceptible to a descent into the delusions of madness.
Much like the belief that the black folk of this nation are being genocided by the police. This is a real legitimate belief. Most of the people that believe this are probably low IQ. They're certainly low information, very low information. But a lot of these folks, too, are taught because the leaders of our nation and the media tell them that they can't come up and get ahead in life, right? And so this is the delusion that he is speaking of. This is the effect of acting this way and in this manner.
Threats, real, imagined, or fabricated, can be used to sow fear, but a particularly effective technique is to use waves of terror. Under this technique, the sowing of fear is staggered with periods of calm, but each of these periods of calm is followed by the manufacturing of an even more intense spell of fear. And on the process goes. Or as Mirlu writes, each wave of terrorizing creates its effects more easily after a breathing spell than the one that preceded it, because people are still disturbed by their previous experience. Morality becomes lower and lower, and the psychological effects of each new propaganda campaign become stronger. It reaches a public already softened up. While fear primes a population for menticide, the use of propaganda to spread misinformation and to promote confusion with respect to the source of the threats and the nature of the crisis helps to break down the minds of the masses. Government officials and their lackeys in the media can use contradictory reports, nonsensical information, and even blatant lies. As the more they confuse, the less capable will a population be to cope with the crisis and diminish their fear in a rational and adaptive manner. Confusion, in other words, heightens the susceptibility of a descent into the delusions of totalitarianism. Or as Mirlu explains, logic can be met with logic, while illogic cannot. It confuses those who think straight. The big lie and monotonously repeated nonsense have more emotional appeal than logic and reason. While the people are still searching for a reasonable counter-argument to the first lie, the totalitarians can assault them with another.
And this is part of the Alinskyite tactics. If you aren't aware, if you read Rules for Radicals, this is the stuff that they talk about doing specifically. So it's not like they're not trained in this and how to do it and the psychology of it. They are. When Patrisse Cullors talked about being a trained Marxist, that's what she means, folks. That's what she's saying. She's saying, I am trained to manipulate people's emotions and to get them into my side of things and to appeal to the masses and their sense of emotional, whatever, their emotional hunger. I'll feed them this thing that their emotions crave. And I will drive them by this. And at the same time, the minute that those masses are done being useful, they're gone. You know, Yuri Bezmenov talked about this specifically. Everyone likes Yuri, but it's beyond Yuri. I mean, we can read Solzhenitsyn. We can look at what happened to the a lot of the old Bolsheviks back in the day. We know what happened in the French Revolution. These people get used up. It happens every time. We have enough history of this. We can go back further than these things, but as far as sort of in the context we're talking of, in the modern world and since the Enlightened Age, the French Revolution is pretty good, but our ancient history, of course, informs us as well. All of the same things, because we are human beings. We live in a closed system, material world. There are, programs and rules to this world. And that's what psychology and the study of human nature and history, sociology, all of those things are about. And we understand pretty well. An individual can be unpredictable, but groups and masses generally are easy to predict their nature and behavior, because it's hard to tell how principled an individual will be. It doesn't mean that you can't manipulate them, though. It doesn't mean that you can't learn this stuff, like neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, the way you speaking specifically to stir and draw in certain emotions. Now, I've never really got into that stuff, but I did used to study, game when I was a heathen, and how to have a man-woman relationship, meaning a relationship in which I'm always maintaining my position and my frame. This is generally what they teach as far as dating advice goes. So women will do things and say things to test you, to see your character, and if it upsets you. And the point is, you always maintain your position, you always maintain your cool, you always maintain who you are. It's a tool of psychological control.
Never before in history have such effective means existed to manipulate a society into the psychosis of totalitarianism. Smartphones and social media, television and the internet, all in conjunction with algorithms that quickly censor the flow of unwanted information, allow those in power to easily assault the minds of the masses. What is more, the addictive nature of these technologies means that many people voluntarily subject themselves to the ruling elite's propaganda with a remarkable frequency. Modern technology, explains Mirlu, teaches man to take for granted the world he is looking at. He takes no time to retreat and reflect. Technology lures him on, dropping him into its wheels and movements. No rest, no meditation, no reflection, no conversation. The senses are continually overloaded with stimuli. Man doesn't learn to question his world anymore. The screen offers him answers.
And this is a product of technology. This is why, Holly said that's what Jeremy says, the feminization of society, all up in our fields. It's pathos versus logos. We are inherently pathos, Holly, or anyone out there listening. We are inherently an emotional being. One of my father's favorite teachings, he's been a minister my whole life, so for 40 years. One of his favorite teachings is that every decision you make is actually emotional, and that's actually true psychologically, and we justify it post hoc. It means after the fact, we logically make it. Now, I'm not saying that is fully true, but even the appeal of logic is emotional. It is how we operate essentially. And folks, we find weird if they don't have emotional centers. In fact, I know a guy who had a very bad accident and was missing, like, not quite half, but a good, I think, third of his brain or a quarter. You wouldn't know that he was brain damaged by the looks of him, but he was, and emotionally he was very muted, had no inflection in his voice. His tone was always the same, monotone, right? And he kind of sort of would laugh or sneer, but it was really hard to read him. It's really strange because it's like talking to, an android. It's like talking to Mark Zuckerberg or something, normally you see things. We see things instinctively in people that show us emotions, and we communicate in all these little subtle ways that you don't even know on a subconscious level. And when someone has that emotional part of their brain gone, it's just kind of weird, and you can't really tell what's going on behind the scenes there. And the other people I've dealt with that I felt have been exactly like this are the few people that I know were essentially psychopaths. They were born this way, and of course this goes back to my former professions. Holly says, us lady people need the moment to think before reacting. You also need good, strong men to essentially help calm you down. I talked about this a while back on my show here, over here at All Minus One. When was it? When I got back from Florida back in February, because I went down there and trained with Full Spectrum Warrior, a bunch of Navy SEALs and one guy was a former Marine Marauder, all private security guys now, and speed shooting champion, all this other stuff. It was a good time. It was fun. And it was a great Christian retreat as well. So it was a very good masculine bonding, lots of stuff. But we went down there to get my wife's grandfather. I was kind of just sort of taking the opportunity to get to do that training because we needed to go down there and get her grandfather. So we bumped up the date like 2 weeks. And my buddy was also teaching there. He was one of the instructors, and I was turning 40. So my wife's like, well, this will be your 40th birthday present. So I had a great weekend. And then we go to get her grandfather, and he breaks his hip. My wife was highly upset. We literally found out we had to drive, 2.5, 3 hours from where we were staying with friends to where he was at. And like literally a block or two away from the nursing home, they tell us he broke his hip. He had broke his hip 2 days before that. It's been 2 days and no one had let us know. So it was my job to ensure that she remained emotionally stable. I was there for her needs, and that I could calm her down, and that I could understand that there was a flip side to this that could be good, which was other members of her family were going to get more involved, which, as far as I know, they have. And actually, I think her grandfather's doing a lot better out of the nursing home and in the care facility he's in now because of his broken hip, because we spoke to him several times recently. He's called her more, and he's been far more coherent. So, praise God for that, because, like I said, it's just something that, you have to have the proper perspective, folks. You can let your heart get heavy and the world burden you, and I promise you that is exactly what the totalitarians want, and that's exactly what this video is talking about.
Ready-made. But there is a further step the would-be totalitarian rulers can take to increase the chance of a totalitarian psychosis. And this is to isolate the victims and to disrupt normal social interactions. When alone and lacking normal interactions with friends, family, and coworkers, an individual becomes far more susceptible to delusions for several reasons. Firstly, they lose contact with the corrective force of the positive example, for not everyone is tricked by the machinations of the ruling elite, and the individuals who see through the propaganda can help free others from the menticidal assault. If, however, isolation is enforced, the power of these positive examples greatly diminishes. But another reason that isolation increases the efficacy of menticide is because, like many other species, human beings are more easily conditioned into new patterns of thought and behavior when isolated. Or as Mirlu explains with regards to the physiologist Ivan Pavlov's work on behavioral conditioning, Pavlov made another significant discovery. The conditioned reflex could be developed most easily in a quiet laboratory with a minimum of disturbing stimuli. Every trainer of animals knows this from his own experience. Isolation and the patient repetition of stimuli are required to tame wild animals.
You notice the isolation part there, and it continues. It says the totalitarians have followed this rule. They know that they can condition their political victims most quickly if they are kept in isolation. Right, which is why the left has to cut off the right and get the right to divide. The left will eat their own, but no matter what, they're never divided. They will justify eating their own. It's such a silly, ridiculous thing. I don't ever watch ContraPoints, but I do know who they are or whatever. I saw that Sargon the other week was talking about ContraPoints complaining about cancel culture because something minor happened to them, whereas before, like, she was not, like, anti-free speech and whatever else, and now she's complaining about censorship, I guess. I don't know. What is the deal there, right? Well, it's about power. It's always about power. But going back to this isolation thing, think about this, guys. I keep presenting this idea. Cities make you psychopaths. Not everybody, not everyone, but for certain, they isolate you. They cut you off. You live in pods. Now, maybe you live in a house. Maybe you have a couple roommates. That's cool. But everything is convenient to you. You have time, too much time to worry and about stupid things and fret about things, and you're not exposed to nature and the world. Nature is very important. One of the best times for me to sleep well is to be out in the woods. I think a large portion of, I've never been good at sleeping, but a large portion of it is just, being outside long periods, getting the proper amount of sunlight and nature and all those things. And I did that a lot in the military. I didn't have much problem sleeping in the military. My life has changed over the years. And let's say when I worked in the jail for years, you're inside a building for 8 hours and you can walk outside. I used to walk out, depended. Depending on where I was at in my life, sometimes I'd walk outside and have a smoke. It was a good excuse to take a break. But sometimes I just walk outside or walk our perimeter because we had to do perimeter checks. It's good to get out, but you're inside this concrete building. You're not getting the exposure of all the things, the elements in the air. Think about this. I worked in a jail which is primarily concrete. X-rays can't go through, which is a good thing because it'll keep me younger longer. At the same time, we're supposed to be exposed to X-rays. You're being exposed to X-rays right now, sitting in your home most likely, unless you have a tin roof. So these things are important. Just like I said, the sunlight, this is why people get seasonal affective disorder, that kind of stuff, seasonal depression, because of the weather. These things are important that we need to understand our natural environments and our natural rules. And technology is a part of this. It's a problem. We have too much technology. We have too much wealth. We have too much comfort. We don't have enough socialization. We are scaled up way too big. And that means that a strong man's going to come along, or strong folks, whoever it is, the elites, and they're going to take charge. They're going to whip these things up, and eventually everyone will be under the thumb of tyranny.
Totalitarians have followed this rule. They know that they can condition their political victims most quickly if they are kept in isolation. Alone, confused, and battered by waves of terror, a population under an attack of menticide descends into a hopeless and vulnerable state. The never-ending stream of propaganda turns minds once capable of rational thought into playhouses of irrational forces. And with chaos swirling around them and within them, the masses crave a return to a more ordered world. The would-be totalitarians can now take the decisive step. They can offer a way out and a return to order in a world that seems to be moving rapidly in the opposite direction. But all this comes at a price. The masses must give up their freedom and cede control of all aspects of life to the ruling elite. They must relinquish their capacity to be self-reliant individuals who are responsible for their own lives and become submissive and obedient subjects. The masses, in other words, must descend into the delusions of the totalitarian psychosis. Totalitarianism, writes Mirlu, is man's escape from the fearful realities of life into the virtual womb of the leaders. The individual's actions are directed from this womb, from the inner sanctum. Man need no longer assume responsibility for his own life. The order and logic of the prenatal world reign. There is peace and silence, the peace of utter submission.
And this is exactly it. It's infantilization. And this is what they're doing with all the minority communities. They're trying. I think the Hispanic community is not listening to this very much, the majority of them. But I can't tell you what the black community is doing per se, because it seems like they're caught up on this fear that they're being genocided, right? And of course, I'm not talking about monoliths here, but we're talking about the folks that are propping up these ideas because they're propping up these leaders. They're voting for them. Well, if votes count. In any case, I'll leave it there, but please go over to Academy of Ideas. Give this video an upvote. There's about 5 more minutes left in it, and he does excellent work, guys. I don't catch his stuff often enough anymore, but a lot of it, too, is because I already know, because I read these things myself. Although I haven't read this book he's referring to, The Rape of the Mind. It seems rather interesting, and maybe I'll pick that up, but I tend to read less books these days. So, in any case, let me do a few things here real quick. Make sure that... Oh, change that. We don't have any... nothing in entropy. And... I don't have DLive pulled up, so I don't know if anyone's in the chat over there, but typically not. So, again, guys, I appreciate you coming over. If you're new, you don't know who I am, I'm Bill. This is all -1. Like, share, subscribe, you know, the thing. And we're talking about the problems in the world and why everything's so screwy. It's quite screwy, right? And it's all... oh, you're welcome, Shelly. No problem. I made a video. I might have covered him a while ago. I made a video back last July. I think I got back from Washington State We were in a wedding, and I was still in vacation mode. We had such a great time. So my wife and I basically extended our vacation back home once we got done traveling for a week. But I did make a kind of simple video on just like 100 YouTubers I really like. The closest person I can think of that does material like I do, that talks about politics, male leadership, masculinity, and adds in their faith, is Bobby's Perspective. And I really like Bobby. So go check him out if you would. He's a great resource. Try to get him on the show, the Ends Justify the Memes. We did chat, but then he never got back to me. So I was like, oh, I have these dates. He's like, oh, yeah, I can do, he was supposed to this month. He's like, yeah, I can do April. And I hadn't heard back from him. So as things go sometimes, right? So I wanted to talk about, this went pretty well, actually. Much better than the last 2 days of streams that have been quite random. I want to talk about George Washington's farewell address again, get into it. Hopefully my brain's going to be a little bit more functional and I'm not going to be all dyslexic reading like I was just the other day. And hold on, guys. I just clicked on something for... I don't know why that did that. Okay. Well, the question is, I'm still in entropy. Okay. Sorry, y'all. I don't know what happened there. If the stream dropped for a second. Let me make sure I'm still okay. Well, this looks like I'm still up. All right, guys. Sorry, I had a little hiccup there by mistake. In any case, where was I at? I was talking about the... Oh, I was talking about reading George Washington's farewell address, and I've been really tired, not sleeping well, and which happens with me. You know, if you all are around regularly, you'll hear me talk about this quite often. Okay, but I did want to talk about other like predictions from the past. Predictions from the past. Well, one, the past informs us of what the future could be, or should be, or would be, because it shows us our nature, and it tells us where we came from and where we're going. Now, a lot of people ignore that. A lot of people manipulate that to try and make up an account that doesn't exist. I tend to like to go to primary sources, although secondary sources can be all right at times, but I try to go to primary sources as much as possible. So let's see here. JM, new subscriber here. Found you from Brother Augustine. Good so far. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah, and hopefully we'll have Michael back on the Ends Justify the Memes soon. So this is my other channel, so welcome, and thanks for the subs. This channel hasn't been growing as much, even though I do more content here, but, you know, I also don't have guests on here, though that might change eventually. So, in any case, I ended up reading George Washington's farewell address last night because he makes so many great predictions about how the country would fracture if it would. And it is everything that he said that has come true that has fractured this nation. So with that, another great individual who observed America around that time, a little bit after George Washington's time actually, was Alexis De Tocqueville. He wrote a very famous book called Democracy in America. And De Tocqueville was a classical liberal type, and he was fighting against socialism. Imagine that. Because the socialists, they don't like liberalism. The word classical liberalism denotates what most of you people actually are on the right today. The aside from the libertarian types, right? Most of you people are conservative Christians, live and let live type. You want to be alone. You understand there needs to be some government and some protection and some force, but you want a watchman government, right? It's Sargon of Akkad's position, that, right? He's a classic English liberal. I'm a classic American liberal. So that explains it all. And I think that that's the best way I think the best way we can organize to have the most freedom and all that other stuff. But we have to safeguard that jealously. If I was a utopian, I would be an anarcho-capitalist, but it's utopian. Don't think it's going to happen. You are missing the problem of evil. So let's get into a little bit of de Tocqueville. Let me... Sorry, guys. I got to have like 15 windows open to run the stream. Just need to make sure everything's working well, running well. All right. So in February 1848, the July monarchy of Louis Philippe was overthrown and the Second French Republic established. The new republic believed that the unemployment problem, which was plaguing Paris, could be solved by setting up government work projects. Sound familiar? This is what we always want to do. Oh, the government will solve it. Guaranteeing employment at a certain wage rate for all who deserve it. On September 12th, the Constituent Assembly debated the continuance of this arrangement, and Tocqueville rose to speak against it. In the course of his speech, he entered onto the subject of socialism, which he considered the logical consequences of recognizing the right to work, and devoted most of his time to a discussion of the socialist positions. By the way, guys, I got my window open, and I can see it's about ready to storm. I mean, not open, but the shades. So if there's a change in lighting, or if for some reason it starts lightning out and things go out, the stream stops, that's why. Forewarning. So, the right to work is interesting because the idea of rights is something that maybe we should delve into a little bit. I'm probably not going to get into that too much today, but maybe I'll talk about it Monday. And some people believe that we have rights from God, and other people believe that we don't have rights. I believe C.S. Lewis more or less took this position because, well, you always have to fight for them. You always have to fight for liberty. And that's a pretty common position. One of the people I really like that has been influential to me and very basic stuff, but influential to me and bringing me into reading and understanding the Church Fathers is this guy named David Burso. He's got a publishing company called Scroll Publishing. And he kind of takes this position. He's got an excellent book, by the way, if you want to read some alternative history, because it's not really alternative per se, but it's an alternative perspective to the founding of America and the mythos that America was founded as a Christian nation. We weren't founded to necessarily follow God, but we were founded in Christian principles for certain, I would argue. And again, conversation to be had maybe another time. Here we have, nothing can be gained by not discussing issues which call into question the very roots of our society and which sooner or later must be faced at the bottom of the amendment, which is under consideration, perhaps unknown to its authors, but for me, as clear as day, is the question of socialism. Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to find the best viewing for both you and I here. Yes, gentlemen, sooner or later, the question of socialism, which everyone seems to fear and which no one up till now has dared to treat of, must be brought into an open, and this assembly must decide it. We are duty-bound to clear up this issue, which lies heavy upon the breast of France. I confess that it is principally because of this that I mount the podium today. that the question of socialism might finally be settled. I must know, the National Assembly must know, all of France must know, is the February Revolution a socialist revolution or not? And by the way, it talked here about the workers' rights and all that. There was like a revolt. The military got involved, all this stuff. You guys have to go read up on your French history, pre and post revolution. It's very important. French thinking until the 20th century was actually really, really good philosophically. And suddenly they went full collectivist. I shouldn't say suddenly, because not all French thinking. Obviously, you had the people that started the revolution. But I think you understand what I meant. There were a lot of good voices out of France about the liberty of the people and just government. It is not my intention to examine here the different systems which can all be categorized as socialist. And that's important because that's stupid. Stop splitting hairs on what kind of socialism we're doing. Is it socialism? Okay. It's bad. It's not good. And I know that there will be some big brain lefty out. Well, don't you want you're a fan of the police? That's a socialist organization. The military is a socialist organization. No, it's not. Perhaps, sort of, kind of. But I mean, if you want to talk about the military, I'm a slave in the military, literally. And if you get dishonorably discharged, you want to get out that bad, you get yourself dishonorably discharged, you're going to have a lot of problems finding jobs and stuff, guys. It's not a good thing. Not a good thing. And also at the same time, yeah, I was in the military as a young man. I also don't believe in standing armies. I believe in the people providing security for themselves. So you could say, well, that's a socialist idea, Bill. But I don't think it should be subsidized by the government either, or controlled by the government. I like bottom up, not top down. I want only to attempt to uncover those characteristics which are common to all of them, and to see if the February Revolution too can be said to have exhibited those traits. Now, the first characteristic of all socialist ideologies, I believe, an incessant, vigorous, and extreme appeal to the material passions of man. Now, this was written in like 1848, so this is pre-Marx, by the way. Thus some have said, let us rehabilitate the body. Others that work, even of the hardest kind, must be not only useful, but agreeable. Still others that man must be paid, not according to his merit, but according to his need. While finally they have told us where that the object of the February Revolution of socialism is to procure unlimited wealth for all. Imagine that, unlimited wealth for all. Does anyone think that that is possible? Does anyone think that within a closed system in a materialistic world there is unlimited wealth? I don't think so, because we have a problem of scarcity. At some point, you run out of things. Now, I think innovation can change that. But we don't really encourage innovation, and I can tell you for sure, socialism doesn't. And in every socialist nation ever to exist, or any sort of form of socialism, I would say that is at least 50%. Like, we could argue in the United States how much socialism we have, right? But if you're at that 50% mark, I'm telling you, you're just downhill. It's all downhill. And your resources will be used up and destroyed quite quickly, because that's what happens. They also are hyper polluters. A second trait always present is an attack, either direct or indirect, on the principle of private property. From the first socialist who said 50 years ago that property is the origin of all the ills of the world, to the socialist who spoke from his podium and who, less charitable than the first, passing from property to the property holder, exclaimed that property is theft, all socialists, all, I insist, attack either in a direct or indirect manner private property. And the crowd says, true, true. Part of the true, yo. Or as the boys used to say in jail, truth. when you look at this, it seems pretty obvious to me, right, that this is a materialistic idea, right? It's focused on how much material somebody has. So there's no spirituality in it, which is part of the point of socialism. It's to humanize everything, to make everyone humanistic, and to kind of revert us back to the Rousseauian noble savage, if you would, the idea that we're better off. And guys, I get it. I'm talking about moving off into the mountains and stuff, but like, we're better off living as these savages, these noble savages. It's utter nonsense. These people want to take us backwards into the most primitive state of humanity. In fact, if we look at the Georgia Guidestones, right? This is some random thing, right? Georgia Guidestones wants to reduce the human population to 500 million or something, like killing 99% of the world's population. I'm not into that. Bill Gates says we got to reduce the population of the world. Therefore, we have to give them the vax. He said that on a TED Talk. I don't know how that makes sense. Maybe people will stop producing more or reproducing if their children live longer. I don't get his logic. Like, they won't have as many children. You want to control the population, have more free markets, and let people get wealthier, and they'll decide if they want to have children or not, you know, as they get access to birth control and those things. That'd be my solution to that. It wouldn't be anything else. Notice all these people, too, who say these things. They're not going first. We want to depopulate the earth, but I'm not going to start with me. All right. So, but another point here to make is, and again, I want to bring up this perspective. It's an interesting idea. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it says a property is the origin of the ills of the world, and the idea of private property. Well, some people in the Christian sphere would argue that all property actually belongs to God, which I really can't argue against. God put us in this world and created it, although he lets Satan run it. So I do not pretend to hold that all those who do so assault it in the frank and brutal manner which one of our colleagues has adopted. But I say that all socialists, by more or less roundabout means, if they do not destroy the principle upon which it is based, transform it, dismiss it, obstruct it, limit it, and mold it into something completely foreign to what we know and have been familiar with since the beginning of time as private property. Now, a third and final trait, one which in my eyes best describes socialists of all schools and shades, is a profound opposition to the personal liberty and scorn for individual reason, a complete contempt for the individual. Again, guys, make sure I got this date right, but this was like, February 1848. February is a good month. That's when all of us Aquariuses are born. Not that I necessarily believe in that stuff, but, you know, just saying. I think I was born in the year in of the cock, the rooster in the Chinese calendar. The old cockatrice. So, let's see. Now, a third and final trait, one in which in my eyes best describes the socialists of all schools and shades, is a profound opposition to the personal liberty and scorn for individual reason and complete contempt for the individual. They increasingly attempt to mutilate, to curtail, to obstruct personal freedom in any and all ways. Amen. And for anyone's edification who hasn't heard me talk about this before, I'm not building false dichotomies here. It's not all individualism or all collective. For me, I understand that we are social beings and there is a collective. There is a limit to the number that collective can impact you in your life and that you can be influential within the collective. Part of that is Dunbar's number. I believe we can scale that up. That is about 150 people or so. This is what I was talking about, probably a lot less structured, but I was talking about yesterday. So you can only know so many names, know so many people. How many of you today feel like you are being properly represented in the federal government? I asked that question just randomly, but do you feel represented in the federal government? Do you feel like that they represent your beliefs, your needs, your say? You know, I was looking at yesterday the numbers too. What there's 20, wasn't that it? 20 million people who work for the federal government? Or no, it wasn't 20 million. It said 2 million. That's what it was, 2 million. Why I said 20 million. And that couldn't have included the military, because the military has got to be at least about 2 million people. And maybe I could be wrong, but that is such a small percentage of the 325 million. Do you really feel like you can be properly represented? Do you really feel like those people in DC care about you in any way, shape, or form? I live in a community with 700 homes. I only know the people on my street. My community is not that big. It might be, I don't know, literally a square mile. They're nice homes here. It's a really nice community, but that's something like if we average 3 people per household, that's like 2,100 people. And I'm sure it's probably more than that. There's probably close to 3,000 to 4,000 people somewhere in this little neighborhood. Doesn't seem like it, but I mean, most homes are going to have at least 2 people living in them. Most of them will. That's why I say we average it out to 3. It's at least 2,100 people. If it's more, having big families like I'm trying to. All right. Let's keep going. They hold that the state must not only act as the director of society, but must further be master of each man. And not only master, but keeper and trainer. So that's true. And this is why you can't be a Christian and a socialist, because you have one master, and that is Christ Jesus, and one trainer, and that is the Holy Spirit. Guys, this is socialism. This is what socialism means. De Tocqueville was right. You should really read him. I'm going to show you where he predicted the conflict between America and Russia here in a minute. For fear of allowing him to err, the state must place itself forever by his side, above him, around him, better to guide him, to maintain him, in a world to confine him. They call, in fact, for the forfeiture to a greater or lesser degree of human liberty, to the point where were I to attempt to sum up what socialism is, I say that it was simply a new system of serfdom. It is. It's 100%. It's a form of slavery, guys. The communistic way is slavery. You're foolish if you think that free people can't have property. That's actually one of the things that denotes that you're a slave. When you can't own things, it means you're a slave. It's so mind-blowing that people are so simple. They can't figure this out because it's not that hard. And we know that the left thinks exactly like this today. This was almost 200 years ago, guys. I have not entered into a discussion of the details of the system. I have indicated that what socialism is by pointing out its universal characteristics. They suffice to allow an understanding of it. Everywhere you might find them, you will be sure to find socialism. And wherever socialism is, the characteristics are met. So there is more to this. I might see if I can come back to it, but I see Holly in the chat here says, thank you for the invite. I just parked, so I just saw. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, Holly, I'll talk to you on Discord. Working out some business here, guys. I'm not going to have my usual co-host on the end just to justify the memes at the beginning of June because he's going on a little vacation, so Tank's going to be gone. And then my baby's due in the middle of June, so we could either not do a show for a month or I can get another co-host for a little bit. And so Holly's probably going to help out, I hope, because I like Holly, the little bit we've chatted with, and I think she'll do a good job if she can do it. So. Is socialism, gentlemen, as so many have told us, the continuation, the legitimate contemplation and perfecting of the French Revolution? What? What? Nah. It is, as it has been pretended to be, the natural development of democracy? No, neither one or the other. Remember the revolution. Re-examine the awesome and glorious origin of our modern history. Was it by appealing to the material needs of man, as a speaker of yesterday insisted, that the French Revolution accomplished those great deeds, that the whole world marveled at it? Do you believe that it spoke of wages, of well-being, of unlimited wealth, of the satisfaction of physical needs? And then this guy defended. He said, I said nothing of the kind. Do you believe that by speaking of such things, it could have aroused a whole generation of men to fight for it at its borders, to risk the hazards of war, to face death? No, gentlemen. It was by speaking of great things, of love of country, of honor, of France, of virtue, of generosity, of selfishness, glory, that it accomplished what it did. Be certain, gentlemen, that it is only by appealing to man's noblest sentiments that one can move them to attain such heights. He is correct, but the phrasing is not correct, because we think noble as in, obviously, kings and queens and whatever else, right? But also, we know that noble means honorable, and it seems honorable to take care of people. But that's not correct. Now, de Tocqueville didn't necessarily know this. We should take care of people. We should do charity, those kind of things. We should take care of people who are in lesser need, but not the people who aren't capable, who are capable. And that becomes the problem. We saw exactly the same thing with the American Pilgrims at Plymouth. And when they changed to a more individualized system of farming instead of the collectivist system they had going, they prospered because some people didn't want to work for other people because that's how it goes. And they were trying a socialistic system. This has happened over and over again, folks. I talk about on occasion the Israeli kibbutz and the early age of Israel forming as it is today. The kibbutz existed. It was a socialistic society. As Israel got more stability and people gained wealth, they moved out. Why? Because the socialistic system isn't as good as a free market system. And by the way, Israel considers itself a socialist nation, which it is. So, but it does have, aspects of capitalism. And as for property, gentlemen, is it true that the French Revolution resulted in a hard and cruel war against certain property holders? But concerning the very principle of private property, the Revolution has always respected it. It placed it in its constitutions at the top of the list. Though people treated this principle with great respect, it was engraved on the very front pieces of its laws. And de Tocqueville talked about the revolution much. It was one of his big things. He was trying to figure it out because it happened right before, more or less, he was a thing. So we can keep going through this in the revolution and him saying, well, it wasn't quite socialism. For me, it was close enough, guys. For me, it was close enough. You could say, well, it was the revolt of democracy. All I know is that France has gone through several republics already in the last couple hundred years, has revamped itself. It's talking about going into civil war again now currently. And look, guys, they have a lot of socialism. If you squat in someone's house in France, it's like nearly impossible for them to kick you out, as far as I know. And if the UN would have its way, that's the way it would be around the globe. You should check your local laws on that, by the way. If you own more than one home and you own a home somewhere and you think that someone might do such a thing, because there are laws that basically say you can't kick squatters out in certain places. So, in any case, guys, you can go find this. Just look up this Tocqueville's critique of socialism. I'm not going to stay there forever. I want to move over to something else because I found it was really interesting that Joe Biden made out himself and others to be the moral arbiters of the world, and that we the people is now we the government. I thought Sargon had a very poignant point about that the other day, and I didn't watch the speech, guys, because I just don't care, because there are bigger things going on to listen to what that clown has to say, honestly, most of the time. I knew exactly what he was going to say. I knew I was going to see 1,001 clips about it, and I don't really care to cover a lot of it, but I do care to cover some voices from the past, like from the doctrines of fascism, because when Giovanni Gentili wrote this and Mussolini, they spelled out exactly what their beliefs were. They're anti-liberal, that is classical liberal. They're anti-free market. But they're also anti-bourgeois versus the proletariat, because they want the government to be the spiritual center and ethical center of all things, where in the communist ideal, it's this class warfare that the proletariat has to rise up and take over the upper classes. Well, that really wasn't the case in fascism. They kind of just understood that there was a hierarchy, but they believe that you just can't exist outside of the system. You're a non-entity. It literally says this, that man by himself in history is a non-entity. So let's start here for a minute. Like all sound political concepts, fascism is action, and it is thought, action, in which doctrine is immanent, and doctrine arises from a given system of historical forces, in which it is inserted and working on them from within. Oh, by the way, folks, just a reminder, I did play a video the other day of a guy reading words of old Adolf to a bunch of lefties, and they applauded him. So, whenever someone tells you that fascism is a right-wing ideology, you can say, well, yeah, sure, it's right of Mao, but it's okay, but it's not really. It's exactly what the Chinese are implementing today. I mean, we're not even talking on the same spectrums here, guys. That's a false framing. They're framing the debate as if anything on the right is fascism and everything on the left is good and amazing and wonderful. And they're both evil ideologies that are far left ideologies, totalitarian and collectivistic. So anyways, let's keep moving on. It has, therefore, a form correlated from contingencies of time and space, but it has also an ideal content, which makes it an expression of truth in the higher region of the history of thought. There is no way of exercising a spiritual influence in the world as a human will dominating the will of others, unless one has a conception both of the transcendent and the specific reality on which that action is to be exercised, and of the permanent and universal reality in which the transcendent dwells and has its being. To know men, one must know man, and to know man, one must be acquainted with reality and its laws. That's a point I would agree with. One point. But just because there are things that are nuggets of truth in there, I mean, Marx has nuggets of truth, it doesn't mean that his entire argument or position is correct. There can be no conception of the state which is not fundamentally a conception of life. Do you catch that? The state is a conception of life. Philosophy or institution, system of ideas evolving within the framework of logic or concentrated in a vision or a faith, but always, at least potentially, an organic conception of the world. Now, guys, the language in this is like most of these writings. It's very verbose, and it's meant to actually throw readers off. When people over intellectualize their writing a little bit, they over stylized it. What they're doing is they're trying to sound smart, and dumb people see that and they go, "Whoa, this guy must be right." So, just forewarning here. Of some of the language here, but you can see the essence of what he's saying, and I'll break some of this down. I'm not going to read a lot of this because most of what I want to read is in the very beginning here. Thus, many of the practical expressions of fascism, such as party organization, system of education, and discipline, can only be understood when considered in relation to its general attitude toward life, a spiritual attitude. Now, that's not talking about within any sort of true religion, because the fascists basically are like, we'll encourage religion as long as you worship the state first. So, keep that in mind. Whoop, didn't mean to do that. Hold on, guys. Just wanted to check the chat here. Yeah, Shelley said hard to follow. Exactly. Fascism sees in the world not only those superficial material aspects in which man appears as an individual standing by himself, self-centered, subject to natural law, which instinctively urges him towards a life of selfish, momentary pleasure. So, I'll break that down. Fascism sees the world not just as the superficial parts, but something deeper of human nature. And that without the structure of the totalitarian regime, man just wants to pursue pleasure. Hardly true at all. In fact, I'd say that the totalitarian regimes encourage the momentary pleasure in most cases, because that's how you keep the masses doped up so that they are easily lulled by your spell. It sees not only that the individual, but the nation and the country, individuals and generations bound together by a moral law with common traditions and a mission which, suppressing the instinct for life, closed in a brief circle of pleasure. Now, that moral law and those traditions, those are the things that the left take. They're the only things they take of fascism. They use against folks who are liberty-minded. But what they're always ignoring are the economics and the state being the central authority. And of course, the atrocities. So again, a little nugget of truth can be in there. You see this all the time, but it doesn't make the whole thing true. And it doesn't make what the left, or I should say the commies, say about fascism true either. So it says, builds up a higher life founded on duty. So fascism builds up a higher life founded on duty to the state, by the way, not elsewhere, to the state. A life free from the limitations of time and space, because as an individual, it doesn't matter. It's all about the perpetuation of the group, the collective, and the nation, in which the individual, by self-sacrifice and renunciation of self-interest, by death itself, can achieve that purely spiritual existence in which his value as a man consists. So that's what I just summed up there, right? He'll sacrifice himself to the state. And this document talks about this over and over again. Folks, don't sacrifice yourself for anyone but a friend or to follow Christ. Forget sacrificing yourself for the state. The state is evil. That is literally taking the mark of the beast, as far as I am concerned. Hey, Yiz, what's going on? Sorry I couldn't stay in your Aiden stream, but I'll check it out later on because I like Aiden's stuff. So appreciate you showing up. This conception is therefore a spiritual one, arising from the general reaction of the century against the materialistic positivism of the 18th century. Or is that 19th? Forgive me in Roman numerals, guys. Or sorry, what did I say? I said positivism. Can I even pronounce it right now? Anti-positivistic, but positive. Yeah, we're not going to worry about it. Neither skeptical nor agnostic. Neither pessimistic nor supinely optimistic, as are, generally speaking, the doctrines, all negative, which place the center of life outside of man, whereas by the exercise of his free will, man can and must create his own world. Fascism wants man to be active and to engage in action with all his energies. It wants him to be manfully aware of the difficulties besetting him and ready to face them. It conceives of life as a struggle in which it behooves a man to win for himself a really worthy place. First of all, by fitting himself physically, morally, intellectually. Again, good points here, but this isn't exclusive to this, right? To becoming the implement required for winning. As for the individual, so far the nation and so far mankind. Hence the high value of culture in all its forms, artistic, religious, scientific, and the outstanding importance of education, hence also the essential value of work, by which man subjugates nature and creates the human world, economic, political, ethical, and intellectual. His positive conception of life is obviously an ethical one, and invests the whole field of reality as well as the human activities which master it. No action is exempt from moral judgment. No activity can be despoiled of the value which a moral purpose confers on all things. Therefore, life as conceived of by the fascists is serious, austere, and religious. All its manifestations are poised in a world sustained by moral forces and subject to spiritual responsibilities. The fascists disdain an easy life. So here he's rejecting the notion of materialism. He's talking about building up man and working for the nation. What he's about to say within this and the religious concept is that fascism itself and the nation state is the religious concept. I ask you, does this sound familiar to what lefties do today who are in the streets? Whatever they label themselves. By the way, folks, if you're just joining, I do need to, remind anyone, if you have any questions you definitely want me to get to, you can super chat over on Entropy. Link is in the YouTube description. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe. If you're new here, go check out my back catalog of stuff I've been doing for the last near year. And welcome. The fascist conception of life is a religious one in which man is viewed in his immanent relation to a higher law, endowed with an objective will transcending the individual. Transcending the individual. See, Christ tells me that I'm a precious being and the individual is quite important. I'm made in his image, or his Father's image at least, and raises him to a conscious membership of a spiritual society. Again, the society, the state, is the head, the spiritual head of things. That's why I named this Predictions of the Past, or from the Past. Both de Tocqueville and what the fascists wrote are things that are going on today that we're looking at and things that the left wants. Those who perceive nothing beyond opportunistic considerations in the religious policy of the fascist regime fail to realize that fascism is not only a system of government, but also, and above all, a system of thought. When the government gets into your thought, by the way, does any of this sound like the white guilt stuff? The cult of woke stuff, the stuff that James Lindsay talks about all the time. Maybe I'll do some of that on Monday. Maybe I'll bring back some of this stuff, and I'll bring in some James Lindsay stuff because I'm a fan of Lindsay. He's a pretty smart dude, breaks this down, and despite him being a academic, he's even talked about, and I'm pretty sure an atheist, he's talked about how this is screwed with our churches and how it's infiltrated our religious thoughts and systems. In the fascist conception of history, man is only man by virtue of the spiritual process to which he contributes as a member of the family, the social group, the nation, and the function of history to which all nations bring their contribution. Meaning man's virtue only exists to exist for everyone else, the collective, and above all, the state. Hence, the great value of the tradition and records and language and customs and the rules of social life. Outside history, man is a non-entity. What? Basically, what Giovanni Gentili is saying here, this is attributed to Mussolini, but most scholars suggest that Gentili is the one who constructed this document. Basically, what is being said here is that outside of any true impact historically within the government, or to work toward building up the state, you don't exist. Some guy who doesn't contribute directly to society just doesn't exist, right? And I don't mean directly to society like, I have a job or whatever. I mean, we'll go along with the societal norm and what the government's push and the people from the top down say that they must do, and sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the state. Fascism is therefore opposed to all individualistic abstractions based on 18th century materialism. And there we have it. Boom! There we have it. Fascism is therefore opposed to all individualistic abstractions based on 18th century materialism. Let me read that one more time. Fascism is therefore opposed to all individualistic abstractions based on 18th century materialism. That is what he's talking about, folks, is free markets, liberalism, classical liberalism, and is opposed to all Jacobinistic utopias and innovations. It does not believe in the possibility of happiness on earth as conceived by the economics literature of the whatever numbers there are. I'm not going to try to figure out Roman numerals. I guess that's 18th. Yeah, that would be 18th century. Yeah. And it therefore rejects the theological notion that at some future time the human family will secure a final settlement of all its difficulties. This notion runs counter to the experience that teaches that life is a continual flux and in the process of evolution. In politics, fascism aims at realism. In practice, it desires to deal only with those problems which are the spontaneous production of historic conditions and which find or suggest their own solutions. Only by entering into the process of reality and taking possession of the forces at work within it can man act on man and on nature. Anti-individualistic, the fascist conception of life stresses the importance of the state and accepts the individual only in so far as his interests coincide with those of the state. Mic drop. Not really. I mean, I've read this so many times, guys, over the years on here. I could keep going, but this wasn't to prove any points of anything really, but just to explain these mindsets and how these thoughts have continued on and echoed, and how these systems are actually the same, which is why I brought up De Tocqueville. And is it this? Yes. Here's an article about De Tocqueville and predicting the Russian Revolution, the Russian conflict with America. But I didn't get a chance to read through this before I started, so I don't know if there are quotes in here. In any case, I thought about covering this sometime here in the future so we could see that how these ideas clashed. And with that clash, we have this this subversion that came in, and it's what is eroding the Western world today. Right? And I'm certainly going to come back to this. I didn't get to it today because, guys, I'm long-winded. Sorry. But this is George Washington's farewell address. And this, perhaps, I will really focus on Monday when I come back. This is such a dire warning to how we should conduct ourselves to have a strong nation, and completely thrown to the wayside. And it's because we we're too big. There are too many people. There's too much manipulation of the emotions of the masses, of the weak-minded. There's not enough masculine leadership because they knew that if they knew that if they were going to be successful, they had to destroy all these strong men. And these are the things that they've gone after. They knew that they could create more and more racial tensions through lies and division. They knew that through their policies of things like welfare and all, they could get people hooked on the state. They knew they could get a 70% fatherless rate in the black community and a 40% in the white community. Those are high numbers, folks. A 10% fatherless rate would be a nightmare. What do you think we're living in? Especially with all these young males. Why do you think there's so much crime and violence in these areas without fathers? And I know it's not really a hot take, but at some point, this is cruel and it hurts feelings in women. Oh my, I can raise a child of my own. Well, yeah, you know what? I was a single father. I get it. But it's not ideal. And up until just a few years ago, my daughter did have relations with her mother regularly. So every weekend. Either way, it's not ideal. And I hate, it's one of my greatest regrets that, my daughter in many ways saved me, but one of my greatest regrets in life is that I could not keep her and her mother and I together without horrible things potentially happening, because I honestly believe that. So guys, you've been relatively quiet in the chat today, which, hey, that's cool, but I do appreciate y'all watching, whether you're chatting or not. But I'm just going to run through here real quick, see if I missed anything. Yeah, kind of quiet in the chat. I didn't get back to George Washington, like I said, but yeah, as a single previous mother, I can attest, right? And again, it's not that you can't pull it off. You need a lot of help, though. And, you get stuck, guys. Why do you think I worked in a jail for so long? Because I had a job that paid, and I had insurance, and it was good. I didn't want to be there. It's hard to move on. But women tend not to discipline as much because of that masculine and feminine. Or if they do it by yelling, and that's not discipline. That's just nagging, guys. Stop it. Ladies, stop nagging. Whether it be your husband or your children, stop it. Please. I love you all, but Yiz is exhausted. She's not saying much. Just wanted to be here and unwind with you. Well, I appreciate it, Yiz. I'm going to be getting off here in the next couple of minutes, just kind of closing out, winding down myself. Going to make a big seafood dinner. I wasn't feeling well last week. Last week was our third anniversary. My wife and I have not been together for many, many years. We got married rather quick, within 4 months, because I knew exactly what I wanted and she knew what she wanted, and I also led that dance. And so last week we celebrated our third anniversary of our first date, and I was not feeling well. My stomach was upset. So we didn't stay out late. So what we're going to do tonight to save money is I'm going to run down. We got some scallops and stuff in the freezer, and some, pretty sure we have shrimp. I'm probably going to run down to Aldi, see if I can get some lobster tail and some stuff. And I'm going to cook up some steaks. We're going to have a big old dinner tonight and celebrate. So that ought to be good. And she's like, can you get some wine? And I'm like, good Lord, honey. And she's like, what? I'm not trying to drink a bunch. I said, I know. I'm just kidding. But she's been really good. She's, I don't know. Every now and again, she'll have a sip of my beer or something like that if I have beer. Holly said, I had a hard time raising my son. I did make sure he had his grandfather present, but he suffers to this day because of the absence of his father. Well, yeah, because he's got no true archetypal male figure in his life. I mean, his grandfather might be that. For me, my ex didn't really even ever connect with my daughter until she was school age, because when she was school age, I was working evenings. My connection with my daughter kind of broke, and it was more my wife taking care of her. And then we split up, like, I don't know, within 2 years or something. So, but before that, my mother was actually closer to my daughter and was more of a mother than my first wife, if that's any indication of who the individual is. And yeah, like, this is a serious problem. But mothers, they tend to infantilize more, right? Peterson talks about this, the idea of the devouring mother. It's a true archetype. It exists. It's real. We all know about it. We've seen it. I know people that live in this hell. And guess what their politics are? Not hard to guess. They're left wing. I literally, no, she's a sweet girl actually in person, but I know a girl's a barista who's complaining about why she isn't making more money, $15, $20 an hour. I'm like, well, you know, you make coffee. Just about anyway. Will you be surprised? No. I know there are some really dumb people out there, but no, making coffee is not a $15 an hour job. Sorry, guys. It's just not. It's not. I go make coffee every day in the morning and no one pays me. In any case, yeah, but, you know, then I met her mom back this was some years ago, but one of the local pubs I, you know, frequent on occasion, not so much anymore, but some years ago when I was single and I wasn't dating then or anything, you know, her mom was like hitting on me and stuff. I had a big old beard then. She thought I looked like Cat Stevens or something. She had a crush on him. I don't know. It was weird. But my hair is longer then too. But yeah, she was interacting with her daughter and she was so cruel and mean to her, just disgusting. And I'm just like, yeah, this is that oppressive mother does this to their child so they can never leave home. So they can have some sense of power and control because no one else will ever love them. So what they do is use tyranny to, you know, keep them in check. And that is much like the video I played from the Academy of Ideas earlier. That's how you instill tyranny. People do it to themselves. If they don't break free, they don't grow, they don't think, they don't learn, and they don't strive to do anything, they get enslaved in their mind. And that's the last place that they can take. That's the last thing they can take from you, is your mind, folks. Your very essence, your very being, your very soul. So guys, that's going to be it for today. Please go over on Sunday. Tank and I should be streaming over at the Ends Justify the Memes. We should be streaming at 3 p.m. Eastern Sunday. It will be a call-in show. We'll try and screen the calls to some degree, but it's, you know, kind of a new thing, so we're figuring it out. And you know, come over if you want to call in, you want to talk to us for a little bit. 3 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, the Ends Justify the Memes, my other channel. And as far as this channel, for a while, I'm toying around with a lot of stuff, and like I said in the beginning of this, I'm very, very deep into writing this book right now, and of course we're going to have a baby soon. There's prep for that. I think we're getting our birthing plan put together as we speak, more or less, and going through the final stages of all this. So live streams is probably going to be what's on this channel for a while, but if I can, I will try and be here every day at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you guys want to check me out, 3 p.m. is a good time for me, and this is a little bit less time consuming because I don't have to wait for everything to upload. So 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll probably stream for an hour and a half to 2 hours daily for the next several weeks until my newborn arrives. With that, guys, let me check chat one last time. Well, I said she's excited for Monday. Well, we appreciate it. We enjoyed having you on last time you were on. Although I didn't want that many people in the chat, but that was kind of a tank thing. Oh, well, I appreciate that, JM. That you hadn't seen it. You should go read the whole thing. It's pretty good. I don't necessarily agree with him on the French Revolution, but it was one of his major topics that he studied. A lot of people did. Another person, if you want to look into classical liberalist ideas in the French Revolution, is Edmund Burke. He was very much wondering why that happened and occurred. And again, those guys weren't so far removed from those time periods, and information moved a lot slower, which probably means, to some degree, there might have been less fake news. The world was smaller too, right? Way smaller, because as the population, as I talked yesterday, was much smaller, people were more likely to know each other. They don't have the scaling problem we have today. Thanks, Iz. You have a good weekend too, and hopefully, you know, we'll see you around. I mean, of course you will. We always see you around. We love you. And guys, that's all I got. So I'll be doing this for a while probably, and I appreciate y'all for being here. Appreciate all the likes. And I'll be back Monday here on All Minus One. And I'll be back Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern over on the Ends Justify the Memes. So, appreciate it, guys, and I wish you all well.